going to go live. Eddie's going to hit live. Eddie, going to hit live. And we're live, finally. We hit that button like 5 times and it finally hit live. Welcome to the live stream this week. Happy Sunday. I want to thank everybody that helped out last week with Eddie as running the show. I did have a little touch of food poisoning. And I know we're starting a few minutes early because it's my daughter's 16th birthday, 16-year-old birthday. How come I can get that out? Anyways, besides that, that's not why you're here. The whole reason you're here is because we're going to be talking about some of the shady real estate practices that real estate agents not only been doing for this past year, but it seems to be more evident this year, but they've been doing it for eons. So I'm going to be enlightening you what is actually going on with some of these real estate agents. And I'm going to be doing this with one of my favorite people to talk to on live streams, and yours too, Matt Kelderman from around the Dallas, Texas area, Dallas, Fort Worth. What do they call it? DFW? Every time somebody puts that on a thumbnail, when they put DFW, I'm like, are they talking about the driving places? Like, what are you talking about? Why did they put that on there? DFW. I hate that. That's a terrible nickname for the Dallas Fort Worth area. But I know it's like the initials, blah, blah, blah. They stuck it together, but I don't know. I don't make the rules. I
always forget how much like everybody else around the country doesn't have any idea where that is. Like I'm just saying letters to people, like especially when you're doing stuff like this. I'm like, oh, DFW. I'm like, oh, people in Michigan probably don't sit around wondering what the acronym for Dallas Fort Worth is. I should probably tell them where I'm from. So,
there's another one that does triad, and I'm like, what the heck is the triad? But if you're married, then you'll know. But the whole reason we're here, Matt, I know that you've seen some shady real estate practices. I compiled a list, and I think that we should elaborate on this. And look, even Stephen Brewer
first comment of the day,
first comment of the day. Steve Brewer says, anyone with common sense knows the real estate agents are part of the blame with these housing markets. Yes, it's true. Those prices are going higher will obviously crash the real estate agents. I do want to preface this with one thing. Okay. The real estate agents do set a price for a home. There's no doubt about that. But the buyers and the market dictate what is going to sell for. You could put a house up for the market for $3 million, but there's going to be buyers that are like, that is not worth it. If it doesn't sell for that price, then the market has dictated the price. That's just how it works. But there's other real estate practices that are much more devious than this altogether.
Look, Steve, I would price every home. And if I was that amazing, I would just price all my homes at $1 million and just cash checks like a maniac, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, just doesn't work that way, bud.
I wish it did, man.
Yeah.
No, I really don't. I want everybody to find an affordable housing option. I actually hate this market more than anything in the whole entire world. I find that, even like in my old neighborhood, I would just look up my old house and I'm like, my old house is worth $315,000. I bought that house for $130,000. That house was not worth $315,000, but the market dictates that price right now. But oh my God, that's ridiculous.
I just left a listing appointment. He bought the house in 2006, brand new, right? So 15 years, that's a long time to own a home, right? He paid about $470 for it, and we're going to be listing in the mid 8s.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that's
some of these prices.
What it is, you know what I mean? It's crazy.
All right. So Eddie, go ahead and throw up the first slide so we can all talk about this. And if people in the comment section can share their stories of bad real estate practices. All right. The listing agent tells the buyer that there are other buyers interested or offers pending on the property when there are not. Yeah. Go ahead, take that slide off, Eddie. That is one of those things that drives me absolutely crazy. I worked with a girl, and that's what she did every single time she had a listing. Anytime anybody went to go show the house, immediately the first words out of her mouth were, you better hurry up and let them know we already have an offer on it. So if they want make an offer on it, they better do it right away. So it made it like this, a frenzy, a kind of thing. Well, she got busted for that, by the way. Yeah. Stone cold busted, and she almost lost her job. So
the crazy thing about that is that bit only works through like the first weekend, right? It's not a sustainable marketing plan for your home. Like it's at the end of the day, if you're telling me on day 14, oh, you better hurry, I got offers coming in. Like, no, you don't, right? It's just such a dead bit. I like the agents who when this happens on both sides of the fence. I've had this be true, and I've questioned the time. It's like day 120, and you're like, hey, my clients are planning on writing an offer, and they're like, you know what, we just got another offer. I'm like, you've been on the market for 4 months, and today you got this second offer. And the worst part of the state of Texas, it's almost impossible to verify if they're lying or not, right? Like, I don't really have any mechanism that I can say, prove to me you have another offer, right? Like that's the hard part on the buy side too, is you just have to assume everybody's being ethical, and we know they're not.
Well, I have this like little trick where I just get them talking and I'm like, oh, well, who's the other agent? Have they been doing it for a long time? And I just kind of keep like getting them to talk. And then eventually like the name, if they do have an offer, the other agent's name will come up and then I'll be like, hey, Beth, do you have like, did you put an offer in on this? And she was like, oh yeah, but it's a crappy one. So I'm like, okay, good.
Yeah, that's one of those crazy market things. Like we probably have 20,000 agents here locally, right? And so it's like, I could maybe try and find out, but also to backtrack it out would be so hard, right? So, and here's the advice around this, right? Because I also want this to be actionable for people too. The reality is, from a buyer's agent perspective, or if you're a buyer being represented by an agent, you just have to be firm in your resolve of what your hard stop is on the house too, right? Like if you just have a price that we're not going over this, we're not going to risk a certain amount of dollars on appraisal, we're not willing to do all these other crazy things, that's fine. Because I think that is a stronger way of testing whether or not they have another agent offer or not. Just be like, look, that's fine. We're just going to write the offer we write. And if we lose it at these terms, we lose it. We don't care. Right.
Right.
It's when you start doing the old, if you're a baseball fan, back when Tom Hicks and the Rangers got Alex Rodriguez, right? Like he just walked in the room, was like $250 million. Didn't care what anybody else was bidding. He just outbid the room, right? If you're going to do that, you're going to lose some money. But if you just stick to your guns and wait for the right property and write the right contract for you, it won't really matter if an agent's doing that kind of squirrely stuff, because if they don't have other offers, their seller's going to tell them to take yours if it's a good offer, right?
As a girl, I didn't understand that analogy until you said it was way overbid.
That's the whole point. That's the whole point is Tom Hicks paid way too much for Alex Rodriguez, and it was terrible.
Yeah. I got it after you explained the whole story, because yay, sports. I'm not a sports girl. I'm not a sports girl. If you guys have any questions during the stream, go ahead and throw them in the chat. That you can put in any questions at any time, or share your stories of what real estate agents have done to you, and we can give you some advice on how to offset some shady real estate practices. Because as much as I'd love to say all realtors are supposed to be, on the up and we signed a code of ethics, we all know people are human, and there's bad seeds in every bushel of apples, I guess you'd say. Agents who would recommend those prices if they weren't buyers that would pay those prices. Exactly. And they have to come down to the price. It always comes down to the price. Eddie, go ahead and throw up the next slide. Can I ask for proof? You can ask. That doesn't mean they have to disclose, because they have the that you can always ask, but it doesn't mean they have to disclose.
Yeah, that's the same here in Texas.
Those agents you talk are all here in Boca Raton. We got a few in Baton Rouge, not gonna lie.
I'm sure Kristina's got a couple of solid agents out in Boca.
I know a couple too. All right, now this is the second one. Agent or broker makes a vague, unsubstantiated claim about the market share, top agent or number one agent. This is always in advertising, and nothing cracks me up more. Go ahead and throw that off, Eddie. Nothing makes me laugh more than when you see in their room they have like a book. They'll have like a book and it has their picture on it, and they're like number one agent, or they have the magazine with their face and their cover on it, like top agent of Baton Rouge. I'm going to tell you right now, that magazine, they purchased it to put on the coffee table to show that they were the number one agent. They are not the number one agent. And they also make fake books. This is the other crazy thing that real estate agents will do. They will have a ghostwriter write a book, and they'll put their name on face on it, and they're like, I wrote a book. You did not. You've been an agent for 3 months. You didn't write a book about nothing.
Yeah. And here's the thing is, it's kind of like, I guess you could probably find a lot of metrics by which you would be in some kind of top percent. I mean, I don't know. I like the agents who do bits with it. I've seen a meme going around, and I hope this guy is real. I think he's a Remax agent, and it's like, it says, Dave voted number one real estate agent in wherever, and it says one person polled Dave's mom, right? Like, according to Dave's mom, if you're gonna do it, at least do that bit with it, because I respect that a little bit. There's a ton of those. We've got magazines here that are based solely on production, right? That And then we got magazines like I don't know what, like top agent producer type things where you pay $500, or you see the agents who do the really high level coaching, right? So like there's agents who like coach with Barbara Corcoran, right? And then you'll see them like do a fake posy picture, like mapping out their business with Barbara Corcoran, right? Like, okay,
yeah, but they paid for the picture.
Yeah,
they paid for them to stand in the picture
$24,000
with her. Like they're working side by side, but they pay for that photograph to make it. To me, I don't like deceptive advertising, and maybe they paid for her coaching program so they could do that. But to me, that's skating the line of being completely 100% deceptive and lying. So that's just one of those things that, like, whenever they say they're a top agent, they could be a top agent for their office. That doesn't mean that they're the top agent for their entire region area.
100%.
That ask to see their numbers.
Yes.
Dave's mom approved.
Yeah, exactly. I'd work with Dave.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, So just make sure you're watching Who's Puffing. Obviously, not a sports girl going to the live during the football Sunday. Buffer, stay home. At least he came out here. Had a shady dual agent when I sold my house. That is the worst. And that's on my list, but we'll just go ahead and talk about this now. That is not a practice that I will do at all. Now, I did do a dual agency 2 years ago, but it was a brother and sister. The brother was buying the sister's house, and he's like, look, I just want you to just do the paperwork. So that wasn't even like a big deal. I already had it listed. The brother was looking around. He's like, you know what? I'm just going to go buy my sister's house. And I was like, he already knew I didn't do dual agency because I had his house listed. He's like, but then in this case, it's fine. Like we already know everything that's about this house. And I was like, okay, that was a completely different situation. But in any other case, I will not do dual agency because of the fact who is representing you, and in this case, it's mostly just paperwork passing over the table. If you're lucky, some real estate agents will only put either the listing agent, the seller's interest in mind, and so they're trying to get them top dollar, or they put the buyer's interest in mind, and then so they're trying to reduce the price to the sellers as much as possible. Yep. So like they can't even it out. Dual agency is a nightmare. What do you say? Dual agency
is a nightmare. We have intermediary here in Texas, and I always assign it away. Right. So like if I have a listing where I get a buyer on it, I assign them to another agent. Right. Absolutely. I make sure it's a good agent. I'm not just going to assign it to any dumb. I don't want the deal getting blown up over lack of ability. Right?
Absolutely.
But I just assign those away. One, if you watch any of my content here anywhere else, I'm always harping on the fiduciary aspect. And I fundamentally believe you cannot be the proper fiduciary for both parties of a transaction. You just
explain a fiduciary.
So fiduciary is, so my list, when I take a listing, when I'm representing you as a seller, my fiduciary, my monetary, my ethical responsibility is to you, the seller, right? It is my job to get you the most money for your house, to protect your financial interests in the house, which means I can't properly represent a buyer on the other side. The listing agreement says that I am your fiduciary, right? So I can't properly represent a buyer because I can't give them a ton of information that a buyer should have if they're being properly represented. Right? And I can't do that because it's a breach of my listing agreement. So I can't properly represent the buyer in those situations, right? And so that's
it doesn't work out for the buyer or the seller, though, because at that point, when you become a dual agent, you're just literally going, here's the papers. What should I do? Just read them. I mean, that's all you can say. You can't give them any advice on anything. You're just saying, here it is. This is what you're supposed to do. And you're checking off the list.
And this
bad
is
idea.
It's why FSBOs in a lot of markets, for sale by owners, have so much trouble selling too, right? Because the buyer inherently thinks they're going to just get a deal on a house by going straight to the seller. And the reality is neither of them typically know exactly what they're doing, right? So then the buyer gets in trouble with inspections. It's just like being unrepresented almost, right? So it's just, like I said, it's not something that I practice. I feel like you can get way too much trouble doing it. It's not my thing.
All right, Eddie, pull up your next slide, please. Oh, he had somebody else for us. How is it a bank buy foreclosed house worth $4,000, renovate it and sell it for $100,000 legal? Because they can. Like, you can buy any house and flip it. It's a flipped property. I'm actually putting out a video in a couple weeks about the dangers of buying flipped homes. So you may want to check that out in like 2 more weeks. It'll be on a Tuesday. So yeah, the banks can do that. Absolutely. You can buy any house for a foreclosed property for, cheap and then flip it. That's what they do.
The bank just wants their note covered. The bank's not in the business of owning real estate. People need to understand the bank doesn't want to own a bunch of houses, right? They want to get their money back and collect their interest. They want you to pay on time every month. So let's say somebody got foreclosed on, and the note that they got foreclosed on was $4,000. That was all they had to come up with, right? And the bank buys that house back for $4,000 and then sells it off to somebody who says it's worth 150 for 100, and that person, you know what I mean? Like it's just the way it goes, man.
Yeah, well, tax houses do the same thing. Deal breaker info was not represented up front, so we did not make an offer. The agent is very short with me now. She lied to me yesterday, said the property was pending and it was not time for a new agent.
Boy,
I would call their broker. That's what I would do.
I would call the broker, and I would also say anytime you're starting to get contentious with a person that you're supposed to be partnering with to help you buy the largest asset of your entire life, it's time for you to reevaluate that relationship.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, not saying things don't get heated, and sometimes buyers need to be told hard truths, and sometimes agents got to be put back in check. Those things happen. But if communication is breaking down in the process before you're even under contract, you're not in a good space for purchasing something so expensive.
Yep. I would call the broker. That's what I would do. Question: would you work for a brokerage where you only got 1.5% commission on the listing side by you got more listings?
You get more listings?
Oh, you more. I don't care. Honest to God, I sell houses at one point. And that was one of my slides. I don't know if Eddie has it up. I'm sure he doesn't even know which one it is, but some agents will do this thing. So in the MLS, right, it will say that the commission rate for the buyer side is only going to be 1.5 or 1% or $500 or whatever. When I go to show homes, oh, hi, Marcus. Thank you for becoming a new channel member.
Nice.
When I go to show homes, I literally look at the house, I send it to the clients, or it's in their automatic feed that comes through the computer. They say they want to go see it. I show it to them. I never even look at the commission until the contract is under contract. And then I have to type it in the computer. And sometimes I'm like, damn, that sucks. But at least they got a house. And I can have them as a client in the future because of the fact that most likely they're only going to stay there to 5 to 7 years, and they're going to want to sell it one day. So I may have not gotten all the money at that point, but maybe I will in the future. And it's all about representing my buyers. So who cares in the long run? That's how I'd look at it.
I completely agree. Right. And I would say anytime, this kind of goes back to the fiduciary conversation. Anytime someone is representing, an agent is representing a buyer or a seller based on the amount of money they're making off the transaction, that's just that agent is probably just in a bad space in general. Right. Like I'm at a point in my career now where I don't pay attention to that because I'm not just closing 1 or 2 houses a month. Right. So I'm much more like you. I want the relationship. I want to build a relationship with the person going forward. I do think from a listing agent perspective, if you're I hate talking about commissions because it's such a sketchy area. If you are taking something less than, I do think that is your responsibility as a listing agent to eat that discount, right? That is your business decision to discount whatever that means, right? That discount should not be passed along to the buyer's agent. And here's the reason why. I actually think it's a marketing issue for the seller. Because you and I don't steer clients, but I know for a fact there are agents out there who, if they're making a less than what is considered normal commission in their area, they will just not show that property. They'll do exactly what that lady said on the previous comment. Oh, it's pending already. Or, oh, I tried to schedule it, but they weren't allowing showings today. So we had to go see these other ones, right? And just try and kick that can down the road. And so from a seller's perspective, I almost feel like the seller is being done a disservice from a marketing standpoint by discounting what the buyer's agent commission should be. Because there are buyers out there who will steer you away from that. Now, in our market where you're getting 10, 15 offers, I don't know if it matters that much. But I hate that part of it.
Me too. All right, Eddie, put up another slide and see if we've already talked about it. All right, put up another slide, please. We'll get to the questions just a minute. I want to put up another slide. Okay. There it is. Put up the next one. That's what we just said.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a good one.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. A buyer's agent does not show for sale by owners' homes. And this is why, because the buyer's agent or the buyer's agent thinks that it's going to be more difficult to work with the sellers because they're unrepresented. And so now they're going to have to do double the work. In this market, and I know that you do the same thing, Matt, which is there isn't enough homes for sale. So I'm combing the for sale by owners all the time to try to find listings for my buyers to see, because there isn't enough houses on the market. So whatever's for sale, I mean, and I've always done this, whatever's for sale, I try to work with those sellers. Sometimes the sellers will not work with a buyer's agent. And I have to tell the buyers, like, it's here. They're willing to show it to you. But I can't do anything for you unless you want to pay a commission to my broker. I can't do it. I can't legally do it. I won't work for free. So what do you say?
Yeah, we have an actual document that the seller signs that says they are representing themselves. They're holding us harmless, right? Like, here's the reality. 99% of for sale by owners probably don't deal with contracts in their day-to-day life and don't sell houses on a regular basis. So they kind of are at a disadvantage from a market knowledge and kind of minute to minute expectation. So there is a lot more work when you're dealing with a for sale by owner. I will tell a for sale by owner up front and have them sign that document. And I'm also not going to let the deal explode because the seller just doesn't understand what's going on. We're all trying to work towards a common goal. So I'll stay away from giving them advice I can't give them. And there are certain things that can be like, look, like, here's where my buyer's at. Here's where you're at. Let's get here, right? Like, you can have those types of conversations with them like they're an agent, but it's not a fun representation, but I still show them. I actually have, I have for sale by owners emailed to me every single day for very specific neighborhoods because we have a lot of them here. So I'm always calling. It's a source of listings and a source of buyer opportunities for me as well. So.
Yeah, well, I've had nightmare stories that I've dealt with for sale by owners. I had one that was an attorney that wanted to rewrite the contract. I'm like, we're not doing this. I had another one that said she was a former real estate agent, and then when I filled out the contract, she's like, "Why does it say this and why does it say that?" And I'm like, "If you're a real estate agent, I shouldn't have to explain this to you. Like, this is common knowledge, And she was.
They're harder deals to get done a lot of times, but.
Yeah, it is what it is.
I still show them.
I show them all the time.
I look at it as a listing opportunity. Even if my buyer's not right for it, I'm trying to build a relationship with that seller to potentially take the listing when then inevitably they don't sell the house because that's just what the numbers say.
Well, right now they do. Right now they do, unless they're difficult. Question: is buying in a 55 plus community wise? Just like any community, is the community on an upswing? Has it always increased in price? Has there ever, or is it a declining neighborhood? You're going to have to look at the hard numbers, and I would look over those in the last 10 years just to see how the neighborhood has increased or decreased in value. You're going to have to take a little look around, drive around. How are people taking care of the property? It's one of those things. You're going to have to work with your real estate agent to pull up those numbers. But in most cases, like in Florida and everything, 55 plus communities, they're fantastic. They're really good in Georgia too. And New Jersey, they have a lot of them. Like places that have a high retirement area usually have really good 55 plus communities. We have one here and it's like pristine. It's like, it's amazing.
We have some here. I think it's like any kind of niche thing that you buy, even townhomes and condos are this way sometimes. It's a limited buyer pool, right? When you go to sell, there's fewer people who are 55 plus looking to get in that. So you just have to look at all the factors. The appreciation is probably going to be a little bit different. I think newer communities are a lot better when it comes to that too, right? Like they're a lot more attractive. We got a lot of newer 55 plus communities here.
And the amenity.
And the amenities, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
There was a whole town in they called the Villages in Florida. When I lived there, it was just a little, I'm not joking. It was a little trailer park community. And if you look up, like Google the Villages now, it's a town. It's a whole town. And it isn't manufactured homes. It's full on neighborhoods, huge PUDs of like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. What they've done with that place is amazing because they kept reinvesting into the 55 and plus community, and they've made a huge community out there. So anyways, next question here. Question generally, what is it better for financing home repairs or remodeling? HELOC refinance with cash out, or if equity or a home equity loan? I personally like a HELOC, but that's just me in my financial situation. You're going to have to work with a financial advisor to figure that out for you. What do you say, Matt?
Yeah, I would not financial advice. And anytime I can borrow somebody else's money at a relatively low interest rate, I'm doing that every day of the week.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so anytime that I can do that, that's what I'm looking for. Especially something like a remodel.
Yeah. Well, I always like a HELOC. It's like that just in case, you just never know. Like, and so you could just, when you have a HELOC, you can have a checkbook, right? So anytime something like pops up and you're like, poop, like you could just write that check out and have to pay it back. I mean, of course you have to pay it back, and you're gonna have to see what the interest rate is that time. But it's always good to be able to have quick access to your equity in your home, and with a HELOC, you can do that.
Yep.
That's a personal thing for me. 6, buyer's agent refuses to represent client in the purchase of a for sale by owner. We've just talked about that.
Yeah, I think that's crazy. I just don't know why an agent would do that.
Because they're stupid. The listing agent accepts listing with unrealistic asking price for the marketing opportunity, the ability to prospect for new clients. This is one of those things that happened to my parents. They told my mom and dad that they could list their house for $525,000.
Mhm.
Like a simple search would have told them that it's not even worth that amount of money. And just recently in the highest market, it literally just sold for that. And my parents moved over 7 years ago.
Yeah.
This agent wanted my parents to list with her. So she was giving them an outrageous price so they would work with her because, of course, that would have gotten my parents more money. But of course, that would have made the house sit on the market for a heck of a lot longer because of that price, which was dumb marketing plan. Thankfully, my parents are smart enough to know that that wasn't the right thing to do for their home. And my dad was like, there's no way this house is worth that much.
Yeah.
So what do you say, Matt?
I deal with the aftermath of this a lot because one of my major lead sources is expired and canceled listings, right? That didn't sell the first time. So I deal with a lot of going into people's living rooms when they've been fed that bill of goods and almost having to like break their heart about it a little bit because they it's easier after they've expired already because they've kind of already had that gut punch and they now understand that the market was off. And if the agent was off by a ton, I think what agents are doing is they're trying to get those buyer leads. And secondly, they're thinking over time they will wear the seller down and eventually get them to a price where they can sell it. It's just negotiation skills. From second one, that agent is showing you that they're unfit to sell your home, right?
I have a question for you, Matt.
Unfortunate.
Have you ever walked away from a listing because the sellers were unrealistic in their price? Me too.
I've fired people. I took 3 listings for like a total of like $1.4 million. And we got the first one under contract and literally things started backing up out of the shower drain. And at that point, I'd already had some thoughts that the seller was doing a lot of really squirrely stuff in these remodels. The next day I fired him. I lost like $2,000 on those deals because I'd already taken photos and everything. And I was like, I can't sell these houses and you're not the type of person I want to deal with. So yeah, I've walked away from business and fired people before.
I don't like when sellers lie to me, and then that's a big giant red flag. If I'm at the listing and they're already, they're being shady and then the price is unrealistic, then I'm like, you're in a different position than I am. You're obviously in a point of desperation. And, if you're willing to lie because you're in that point, then this isn't going to go well. So I've
let buyers. I've fired 2 buyers because they were racist, right? Like it just like they say some crazy stuff. I'm like, we're done. Like we're just done. You know what I mean?
Can't handle it. My husband's Spanish, and I had somebody like say something that was just totally out of line, and I was like, I just have my husband's Colombian. And they were like, oh, well, I didn't mean it like doing the backstroke. And I'm like,
oh yeah,
I was
absolutely. People say some crazy stuff, and I'm just
needless to say, it was like, yeah, we're not doing this anymore. We're going to move on. People are crazy. Dara says, question, what homeowners insurance do you recommend? I have State Farm and I think they're a little expensive. Plus, I thought I heard they were potentially difficult to work with. I live in Kentucky. Now, here in the state of Louisiana, and when my parents lived in Florida, State Farm was a freaking nightmare. I'm not lying. They will backtrack on everything. Like even with my husband and I's own home, we had our first house. We had a hurricane that came through and it lifted up some shingles. We made a claim. We told them. Now the company said, don't call a roofing company, have us come out there to inspect the property. We listened to them, which we shouldn't have. And they said, oh no, you got another 5 years on this roof. Sure enough, we ended up selling the house within that 5 years. It was like literally 8 months later. Inspector comes up there and like, this roof is trashed. It's trashed. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then he takes all the pictures and we're young. We don't know any different, He takes all the pictures. And as soon as I saw it, I'm like, there's no gravel on the shingles, none of it. And I was like, we needed a new roof. And that guy literally said we didn't. What a liar. And then the squirrels had chewed around all the boots and everything. It was such a mess. And then all my other neighbors got new roofs except for us. So then we had to pull out of our own pocket getting a brand new roof. because of freaking State Farm. And they did that to my parents too. They did the same nonsense to my parents, and they were almost kicked out of Florida because they had they said they were going to pull out their homeowners insurance there, and Florida said, well, if you pull out your home insurance, you're going to have to pull out your car insurance too. And then we're like, okay, well, we'll leave it there. We'll leave it there. But they went ahead and jacked their rates up so high that nobody wanted their homeowners insurance.
Yeah. So they just priced it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
so
I use
it's personal experience.
Yeah. I think everybody's personal experience. I think going online and trying to find reviews is almost impossible too, because people only leave reviews when they're really upset about insurance. So you're probably not going to be able to find an accurate source there. I have a gentleman here I recommend most people to. He's an insurance broker. He can shop you for rates, stuff like that. You get multiple companies, but it's one of those things you kind of got to do your own due diligence. And look, insurance companies try not to pay. That's just what they do, right? That's just what they do. And I think we have to start with that premise.
But if you're a vet, get USAA.
All day long. Yes.
That is the best homeowners insurance on the planet. They do not mess around.
Speak about the loan process, but they're an amazing insurance company.
They're a fantastic insurance company. Amoeba microbiology.
That one always gets you.
I'm not even going to attempt it. I can't, this dyslexic brain cannot do it. Thank you. I just had to replace an AC and furnace at a big unplanned expense. Ooh, did you have a home inspection? I have to know.
Those are rough ones.
That is the worst.
Home warranties too, right? Like home warranties, again, it's as I just sit here and dump on insurance policies. But home warranties can help with some of that stuff. I make sure that every single one of my clients have the platinum package of whatever home warranty the company they go with that first year. And I've had this happen. I had to deny a 92-year-old woman's AC one time. The home warranty's like, we're not going to replace it. It's too old. I went over to the house, grabbed her garden hose, sprayed it off, had her call them and come back out. And they're like, oh yeah, we'll replace this. Right? It was just so ridiculous. So I think getting your agent involved, if you have a home warranty, to help them kind of rally around that a little bit.
Right.
Help. I mean, your situation may have just been, out of luck, but that's
right. And my parents have a home warranty that they use, and some real estate agents will flat out say, oh, they're not worth the paper they're written on. My parents, I talked them into it, and it was the best money they ever spent. They got Old Republic. I don't know who you use, but
we have them here too.
Yeah, they had Old Republic. They had a pool pump that went out, and they had that covered under there, and they replaced the whole thing. And then they had this weird hood for their stove that would pop up out of the cabinetry itself.
Yeah.
Just like this. It came up like this.
It's like the downdraft exhaust fan type of thing.
Yeah,
anyways.
Yeah. So they couldn't get this thing to go up. It worked all this time. And of course, as soon as the house went up for sale, then it decides to break. Home warranty came out and fixed it. They'll replace the whole thing. And my parents were like,
I've had a lot of success with
how they make money.
I think they're great. One, I think it's a minimal cost for a little bit of peace of mind, right? A really great all coverage home warranty, at least in Texas, isn't going to run you more than $600.
I was just going to say $600.
$600, but I'll spend $50 a month for peace of mind on some major mechanical in my house. And yeah, they're still an insurance company. There's going to be times they don't pay on stuff.
Right. And if there's anything questionable in a house that you're purchasing and they do offer a home warranty, and you're kind of more concerned about the roof or the pool or anything else, you can add to those home warranty companies. You can add an extra policy on top of it, so it will cover those areas.
Yes.
So for instance, the roof, they'll say, well, we can, replace X amount of dollars, but you can add more to it. There's an extra policy on top of that policy.
We get so much hail here in Dallas, Fort Worth, that I feel like everybody could get a new roof every 4 years anyways.
I live in Louisiana through the hurricane trail. I mean, really.
A roof on a house is about the easiest thing for me to negotiate, especially with hail damage.
I love when they say 35-year roof. I'm like, not here it ain't. No. Forget it. 35 years by Heine. All right. Question. What about real estate agents selling their own property? Would you steer clear? This is so in the state of Louisiana, I don't know how it is in other states, but in the state of Louisiana, it has to say owner agent. Every time I've ever sold my house, I have a real estate agent in my office sell it because I do not want to be responsible for anything. I also have a folder full of everything that I've ever done to this house, every receipt, every bug treatment, every light switch, everything. Anything that's ever been done to this house, it's in a folder because I am not going to be in trouble for anything. I'm
Yeah.
not, no one's going to say I didn't disclose anything. How do you feel about an agent selling their own house?
You kind of completely hit the nail on the head. Now, I don't want to say like steer clear of it completely, right? Because if the house makes sense for you and it's priced right, I mean, understand that the agent essentially part of their professional, all of our jobs have these like little perks we get. One of the perks
Mhm,
of representing your own self as an agent is you save the commission that you would normally pay yourself. And that doesn't
mhm.
decrease the market value. So there is some extra money there for you. And I think there's plenty of agents do it fine. I'm with you though. I don't personally do it. There's just too many things that get in the way. But there's a lot of flipper agents who sell. There's a lot of people who got their real estate license just so they can save commission on flipping their own houses. They don't even represent other agents. They just carry their license to do their own deals.
Do you know what the worst though? They flipped the house. They're representing it as a listing agent,
Mhm.
and they're gonna go ahead and represent the buyer.
Mhm. It's it
I've
can be
actually talked about this in my video that I'm talking about in a couple weeks about flipping homes. That, my friend, is a very bad idea.
that is a terribly bad idea. And here's the thing
Terribly
is,
bad.
right? Obviously, we're real estate agents. We're gonna tell you to get a real estate agent, duh. And why wouldn't you, right? Like, I'm not gonna be that real estate agent who compares us to doctors and lawyers because I didn't go to college for 4 to 8 years to do this. I was a bartender, right? Like, I'm not a
Mhm.
doctor. But at the end of the day, like, you do need a professional representing you, especially if it's up against another professional. Why would you step into the batter's box against a professional pitcher, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So if,
Mhm.
if you're on the buy side in most states, it costs you nothing. And you're almost
Mhm.
assuredly not going to be able to negotiate that commission back into your own pocket. So why wouldn't you have somebody that you know, like, and trust represent you? Interview agents, find somebody who knows what they're doing. I think somebody here asked, what
Absolutely.
questions would you ask, right? Like, don't go in
And
unrepresented.
everything is negotiable.
And everything's
Everything.
negotiable. Yes.
Everything is negotiable. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I would never, buy a flipped home that the agent was the flipper and they're representing the buyer as well. I mean, whose interest do you think they have? And it
Oh,
certainly isn't the buyers.
100%. Yeah, it seems
And
pretty
you
logical.
can claim and anybody can claim, "Well, no, I do it, ethically," and maybe you do, but I would say a good portion do not. I
Yeah.
mean, that's anecdotal, but I
And you
would
won't know until you know. It's too
yeah.
late at that point.
Yeah, and then what are you gonna do about it?
Yeah.
Question, is it possible to disband an HOA or is that a rumor? That is an attorney question, but I think that if it's filed in the courthouse and you haven't been collecting dues for X amount of years, this would be dependent on the state, then it becomes like a dormant
Like
HOA.
voluntary or something like that at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, becomes yeah, you would like,
You know, I would be speaking from an area of not. I've never experienced that, right? Like I've had deals that fall apart because the HOA's broke and they're
mhm,
getting sued. You know what I
mhm.
mean? Like I've got, and I don't know what the long term effects of that are for the HOA, but I've had condos that we couldn't represent because they didn't have any reserves and they were being sued over $2 million roof deal or something crazy like that. But
Accounting problem.
I've never seen any disbanded before. I don't know.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't
HOAs
we
are always a
one
racket. Like,
here.
look at it this way. Anything the HOA is giving you, you could do cheaper yourself, right?
Mhm.
Because they 100% have overhead, right? HOA fees can be a couple $100 up to $1,000 just to transfer paperwork. You're really the HOA is supposed to try and keep everybody else in line so you don't have these ridiculous viral videos, right? And they should be providing some value as well, but they don't all do that.
No, our HOA is, like, so crazy. They will send you letters because you left your garage door open for
Oh
too
yeah.
long. So dumb. But, I will say, though, that, like, if you have an HOA that's filed at the courthouse, and even though the HOA may not be active at this time, they have to do something to technically, legally dissolve it. They
Yeah.
can't just like, you can't just say, "Well, there's no more HOA here." If there's still filed restrictions and they don't have um it in the courthouse where it has been dissolved, it's still in existence.
Yeah.
So
And I
somebody could
believe
pop
that.
their ugly head up and say, "Hey, this house hasn't been doing this. They need to pay fines."
And that's
It
usually what happens.
happens.
It's usually some neighborhood squealer.
Yeah, that came out of the woodwork. Some Karen
Yes.
that's just having a problem. A question, can you give me advice about questions to ask during a tour? I have a video tour on a duplex tomorrow, and we are first-time home buyers.
Oh yeah.
Oh, so
This
so you're walking through it with somebody's gonna be taking a camera and, Well, I would say have them point that camera to the ceiling to make sure there's no roof issues. I have them
Yes.
point that camera at the bottom, make sure that there's no buckling in the floorboards, so there's no
Yep.
water intrusion. I'm a big proponent on looking for as much mold and water intrusion as possible, especially being here in Louisiana. What are your tips, my friend?
I actually, here's the thing is like, I have probably in the past 18 months represented about 12 people that I've never met in person, and they've never set foot in the house until after closing, right?
Yep.
Due to COVID. And I just represent a lot of people from out of state. So I think there's a few things that you do. Exactly what Kristina just said was really huge. Have the agent check out everything, right? If you see, ask them to be looking for cracks in corners. Ask them to be looking at the air conditioner. Look at the mechanical. Get an up close look of that. If you're in Texas, you have an attic. Have them crawl up the stairs and turn on the light and take a peek around at the insulation in the attic, right? Try and get an idea for how old the mechanical is. When we say mechanical, AC, heater, water heater. It's really about it. Electrical, plumbing, you can't really see, that way. But just have them get down and check some things. I like to run some of the sinks. So one of the things that I'll do is I'll go in the bathroom and turn on a couple of the sinks and just let them kind of run a little bit to see if it even backs up a tiny bit. Because there's so much stuff people can't see when they're looking through a camera lens. I also like to show them the street. Sometimes I'll call them on FaceTime before I even turn onto the street so they can see the drive-in, right?
Mhm.
So they kind of know the area around it. Like really just taking the time to look at all the things that you would want to see if you were there in person.
Right, and what in the attic too, that's another place to look
Mhm.
look up the
Yes,
ceiling because you can see, like, they'll look dark black spots. If you see those, those are that's a water intrusion, that's water
yep,
spots. And then,
exactly.
another thing too is have them open up the cabinets where there's piping. So whenever there's
I
the
love that.
kitchen and the, bathrooms, have them open up those cabinets and see if there's any water dripping right there. I have nightmares when it comes to water and mold, being here in Louisiana.
Oh, it's a big deal. It's a
It's a
big
big
deal.
deal.
We've gotten, there's a difference between the black mold that scares everybody to death and then just organic growth that happens naturally from condensation on vents and
Mhm.
things like that. But just one, I think part of this is you have to have a really in-depth conversation and know that your agent is a very thorough person if you're going to purchase a house this way, right?
Ooh.
Because the other thing they need to be doing is they need to be guiding you a little bit too.
Right, and one more thing. So when you look at the windows, have them actually look at the windows themselves because double pane windows will this happens more like all the time because people use a pressure washer and it will break the seal of the double pane windows and then there's fog and condensation that builds up between it. Now, in many cases they can fix it, but if it's been going on for too long, there's a calcification of that and it's etched and you can't fix it. So the whole window needs to be replaced. That can get kind of expensive, especially right now as building materials are harder to come by and people are having to pay a lot more than they would have a couple years ago for a new window. That's something that should be negotiated if that is an issue. So definitely have them look at that ahead of time.
Yep, dead on.
So those are some things you can look at there. Question: what similarities are currently happening in the housing market that compare to the collapse of the 2008 housing crisis? The rapid increase in price of homes is the biggest thing I would say would be the most similar, but everything else is different because what happened in the last housing crash was due to really crappy home loans. It was these interest only stated income loans. They were really basically giving a home loan to just about anyone, and it was causing the housing prices to like terribly go up. I mean, like, just go up so stupid. I mean, I remember in my neighborhood, it was going up $10,000 per week. Every week I'd check and it was up another $10,000. The difference between this one and the last one is, and I've said this 1,000 times, is this market is being held up by cash. We have more cash buyers in this market than we've ever had that I can ever put my head on. And this is my 14th year in real estate. We also have a lot of investors that are sitting in the waiting in the wings, waiting to buy as many houses as possible. And anytime they come up in the foreclosure sites, they're gone before they even start. Unless you look on HUDHomestore.com, you can beat them at their own game. But yeah, this is being held up by cash. And I didn't in 2008. They didn't have iBuyers. They didn't have all these e-commerce type of buying of homes. Now we have like Zillow and all these major companies like Redfin buying houses and driving up the prices of homes. The housing market is not going to pop like it did in 2008, because there isn't anything that's going to make it pop right now. That doesn't mean that there would have to be some other financial bust in order to make housing crash at this point. What do you say, Matt?
I mean, you pretty much just covered. I think the bigger concern in this market is not the housing bubble. It's the amount of investors who now own properties, right?
So
We've
many.
talked about that too. It's so many. If you're looking for what's ultimately going to start robbing Americans of the dream of home ownership and turn us into a renter society, which you and I have talked about,
Corporations.
That's what's going on more than anything else, right? The money is real, right? What happened in 2008 was somebody went in for a $250,000 loan. The bank said, well, we can put you in this other kind of loan. It's called an ARM loan. And you can spend $400,000. And then people start losing their job and they're like, I couldn't pay this bill before. I certainly can't pay it now. And so, but it's the institutional and the investor buyers right now that are a bigger deal than the kind of the bad loans that banks were doing in 2008.
And if you really want to have a hysterical adventure in the evening and for some light reading, read how that these investor companies have tried to smooth over the fact that they're literally buying all these single family houses. They'll literally say, well, we're buying the most unattractive, least expensive houses. I mean, these aren't the ones that people really want. And we're actually beautifying neighborhoods by doing this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're taking away the opportunity for somebody to buy their first house and fix it up themselves. Like my husband and I did when we bought our very first house. They would have scooped that house up in a heartbeat. And that's what they're doing. It's actually increased like 20% in Atlanta. The amount of investors that have been buying houses, single family dwellings throughout the city.
I'd like to see what that metric is for here in Dallas-Fort Worth too. I bet you it's astronomically high.
Oh, I know it is that high in Austin, Texas, because I actually saw that happening in Austin, Texas before the pandemonium had started, and I had made a video about it. And I'm like, this is what people are doing. People thought I was crazy. They were like, oh, come on, conspiracy theory. I'm like, no, it's not. They're really doing this. Yeah. And it was like the third page of Google that I ended up finding it. And then all of a sudden it became front page news. And I've been like, I was saying it for months. I knew that's what they were doing. No one listened to me. I know that I seem flighty, but believe it or not, there is some good knowledge inside this brain of mine.
It's in there.
It's in there. You just got to shake it about a little bit. All right. I think we covered that, Sybil. I hope I answered your question. Eddie's going to put up another question right here.
He's going to find us a good one.
Eddie. All right. An agent represents both the buyer and the seller in the same transaction. We already talked about that. It's dual agency. Don't do it. Find another agent. They take horrible listing photos and offer a walkthrough video for the listing.
This is so bad.
This is so bad. If you go on Zillow, if you go on realtor.com, and I don't know why they do this. Whenever they think it's a listing that's just not worth it, like, oh, I can just take it with my phone, or you see the baby in the picture, or you see like the grandpa in the picture, To me, that is just literally like you have a job. You couldn't even do the bare minimum, which was hire a professional photographer to take pictures of the house. I even do that on my least expensive listings. I mean, I'm telling you, they're like $35,000 houses. It does not matter. You get the same level of expertise from me if you're selling a $35,000 house, or you're selling $1.5 million house. And you always get a video tour. If you don't want it, then I won't do it. But even then I'm like, okay, well, I'll do a video tour where I show the outside of the house and then I'll show the neighborhood, because I want people to be able to see what they're getting, like that's part of marketing. Yes. What do you have to say about this, my friend?
I mean, you're dead on. One, if you ever list your home and go online and see cell phone photography, you need to immediately question your real estate agent and probably start figuring out what you're going to do next. Understand that people search for home two ways. They think the pictures are pretty, or it's a pin on the map, right? That makes sense for their life. Photography matters a ton. You can't be doing any real marketing if your photography is terrible, which means you're not getting as much opportunity from the seller side. I hate fisheye lenses, right? If fisheye lenses drive me crazy where they try and widen the room. But most importantly, it's not just that. It's also that a good professional real estate photographer also has an eye for the space. You can have a $5,000 camera and not think that you need to close the toilet seat or turn off the television or turn off the ceiling fans.
Yes.
Right? Like, there's so many things in pictures that people just don't do. They leave the space really cluttered, or they try and get you some really artistic shot of like a water faucet, like really close or something ridiculous, right?
I
Like,
do that on my listing videos.
and that's fine. Listing videos are a totally different thing, right? So, because that is where we are different. We get the same architectural photography for every price point, but as it goes up, we start to add twilight photography and then high res, like really in depth video, right? Like stuff that costs, they're expensive to do, right? We have an in-house photographer who'll do walkthroughs of the houses though, like those really bougie ones where like a car pulls up. We've done those too. So,
Yeah. Well, anybody that knows me and knows how I do real estate, whenever I have a listing, I always do like a goofy, like a silly video, and then I do a
yeah,
more professional video.
I like that.
I always, I actually wear wigs and play a character and stuff.
I
But
do
this
too.
market has been so crazy. But a lot of the people were like, let's just get it on the market. And of course it sells so quick. They're like, see, it wasn't even worth it. So,
Yeah, it wasn't worth it.
but I mean, I always do the walkthrough tour and but I still will
I think
always
that's
do the
great.
walk tour. Yeah, it's smart, 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 smart. All right. How much more effort is needed to represent a $1 million home versus a $100,000 home? It's pretty much the same. The only thing that I could say with the $1 million listing is that they want they'll want like an agent open house. They want the agents to see it first. So I've noticed that they will ask for that first. They want a luncheon where all the agents can come through and tour the house first. So that way they get the right kinds of clients that come in to see that $1 million house. But there's no difference. I mean, the marketing plan is the same. Like I was just saying, you still get professional photographs. You still get a professional video, which is edited and is used for marketing. And it goes out on all the syndicated websites where you can be found. There's no difference. There's no
It's typically,
difference.
the only thing is it's typically a smaller buyer pool. So some of your marketing's got to be a little bit different as far as how you're targeting it. Maybe even sometimes running comparables are a little bit different because there's not as many. Usually in areas where there's 100, $150,000 houses, there's a lot of solds in there, a lot of really recent information. Sometimes if you're getting a like more rural, larger property, there may not be as many. So there's some nuanced stuff to it, but the actual process of representing the client, it's no different at all. Not at
None.
all.
None. What always makes it funny to me is like some people, they're like, we're buying $1 million house. I'm like, that's great. And they were like, we are buying $1 million house. And I'm like, that's great. Like,
Super awesome.
yeah, like I'm happy for you, like
Yeah.
you're buying
Here's the thing about it. At the end of the day, it is very rare for whatever the price point of the house to not be that person's largest asset. And if you're
Exactly.
approaching it from that standpoint every time, then you're just always saying, look, how would I want somebody to handle the most expensive thing I am probably ever going to own? Right.
Uh-huh.
And then if you look at through that lens, it's kind of all the same. You're just
They're
doing your
all
best.
houses and they're just as important, no matter if it's 100,000 or $1 million.
Yep.
It's just as important to that buyer
Agreed.
because they're spending their hard-earned money for it.
Mhm.
So it's the same. Nancy Stark says, question, are these scams when you see ads out there for homes for rent, to lease, to buy, to rent? Rent to buy homes. Rent to
Yeah.
buy. Okay. In some cases there are. So we have something called a lease purchase here in Louisiana. And I have seen a lease to own homes. In my career, 14 years, I have never, ever, ever heard of anybody saying, I leased a house for 15 years and I was able to purchase it at the end. Technically, what they're supposed to do is they take a portion of that rent and put it off to the side. And it's supposed to be a non-interest bearing account that holds your deposit that you would use to purchase the house in a future purchase. Most landlords know that the people that are doing a rent to own are not going to do that. In the state of Louisiana, we have something called a lease purchase, which means that the buyers put down a deposit and they have 1 year or whatever the terms are to lease the house or rent the house out. But once that term is over, that $10,000 is used to purchase the house. That's the lease. And then the purchase amount is the down payment that they held. If they can't do that, the sellers actually retain the $10,000. So a lot of home sellers actually are like, yeah, I'll totally do a $10,000 lease purchase. I'll rent it out for a year. The problem is that I've seen a lot of lease purchases go very bad. And the people that are lease purchasing do not care that they just lost $40,000. They're like, whatever, whatever. I couldn't believe it. We had one that was $650,000. This guy put down $45,000 for a lease purchase. The sellers were like, fantastic, we'll totally do that. And he had 9 months to get a loan secured in order to purchase it. In that 9 months, he demolished that house.
Sure.
Demolished. Like, in my area, $650,000 is a really nice house.
Yeah.
It had a swimming pool and everything. They had already remodeled it, and this guy trashed it. I mean, he like left furniture in there and everything, and he lost $45,000. But it took them all of that amount of money, $45,000, to get it back into condition to be back on the market. What a jerk.
I have found that typically people who are seeking for like the lease to own think that that is a more affordable way to purchase a house, and it is just not. You are going to pay a higher interest rate, right? Like, especially if that's a person's business model. I've seen 7, 8, 9, 10% interest rates on seller finance properties, right? They're just not. I just think if you have the opportunity to get a FHA or a VA or a USDA loan, right, that is always probably going to be your better option than leasing to purchase.
Right.
I know that it works for some people, but they are the exception, not the rule. Most people would be better in a conventional loan format, purchasing the house outright and having the bank as the one who holds the note, not Joe Seller.
Right. And you have to really make sure that the seller that you're purchasing the house from is actually using those funds and withholding those funds, and have a running documentation that says, yes, I've held this amount of money, and show documentation that it's in this bank account. Because who knows, at the end of your lease, and you're like, yay, I'm going to buy it. I have the money now. Like, this is how much I should. If you've retained that and you've kept documentation, but he hasn't had it in the account, what are you going to do?
Well, yeah,
what are you going to do?
You have to go sue them and all kinds. I mean, it's just, what a mess, right? Like, it's not something I'd want to be involved in.
No, I mean, I know that some people are in that kind of situation where they think that's a good idea, but I personally do not find that to be the case.
Most often than not, it's not going to be your best route.
No. Very basic question here. What are the best steps to take when buying a home? First time home buyer here, and a bit confusing when I'm looking up the information. I'm going to tell you my first step. The first step you should do is you should get all your documentation together, your W-2s, your bank statements, your pay stubs, any kind of investments you have. Collect all that information first, and then go over to a lender and say, hey, this is what I have, and this is my debt to income ratio, and I need you to figure this out and tell me how much I can afford in a home. That's your very first step, because there's no point in looking at a bunch of houses if you don't know what you can afford. Then your next step is start interviewing real estate agents. Now, you can look online because you know how much you can afford, but you want to find a real estate agent to represent you. You don't want to necessarily call the people on the sign, because then you would have dual agency. So I'd start calling around some local real estate agents in your area and see if you want to work with any of them. Ask them some questions: how long they've been in the business, would they be interested in working with you? Get a feel for them. You'll pretty much know within a few minutes if they sound standoffish. You're like, whatever, move on to the next person. And then get educated by them, because they'll be able to tell you about market, the neighborhoods, the schools, everything. They got all that information that they can send to you. What do you say, Matt?
That's pretty much it. The financing part really has to come first. One, that's just going to allow you, in most markets, specifically here in Dallas, it's going to allow you to narrow your area of focus more than anything. It's also really hard to backtrack mentally, right? If you're out looking at homes that are above your price range, and then you've got to back it off because, the online calculator you use didn't figure in homeowners insurance and taxes properly, and your payment's significantly less. Now, all of a sudden, you're in a position where you've been looking at houses that were really pretty, and now maybe you've got to back down to something that might need a little bit more work, and it's just totally changed your mindset. So figuring out the financing part's huge. I think you can engage a real estate agent at almost the exact same time as well. I mean, I wouldn't mind. And here's the thing: is Kristina doesn't want people, and I understand why. I don't think you need to start seeing homes, but I think you can start. A good real estate agent is going to have good lending options for you. If you call me and I'm your first point of contact, I've got 2 people that you can reach out to immediately to start having lending conversations, right? So I don't think going and looking at homes is a good idea, but I do think you can start building a relationship with the person you're going to trust while you're building that financing part. But the money has to come before you're really making any decisions. And that's part of my interview process with buyers. And when I'm asking them what they're looking for, it's, okay, where are we at with the financing? Have you spoken to anybody? Yes, no, right? Like, do you need to speak to somebody? Is there anything you think might come up? you know, do you have any car repossessions, foreclosures, evictions, like big stuff that people know is on there, right? And just kind of try and start getting them pointed in the right direction. So that's, I mean, that's how I handle my buyers.
Okay, I will preface this as this. If you do know a real estate agent that has been highly recommended, then meet with them first. But if you don't have that, get the financing first.
Do the financing. You don't have to do it that way. You don't have to do it that way. That's just kind of how it works when people come to me and they haven't, like this person, they come to me and they haven't done anything yet. The conversation is going to look a little bit like that. So.
I had a buyer once tell me that they, well, I had a foreclosure about 7 years ago. I'm like, oh, okay, let's, get you over to my lender so we can get this. And it was literally 3 years ago, like literally just like, just hit 3 years. I'm like, 7 years, 3 years, how we were going to figure that out. It's on your records. All right. Next question. Do we have any questions that came up, Eddie? Yes. War and Peace. Love that. That is the best screen name. Love it. How do you register with HUD? I went to their website and I can't find where to qualify. All kinds of info, but no place to register. Are you?
I thought it was HUDhomes.com.
Yeah, just go to HUDhomestore.com. You don't need to register. The real estate agent needs to register. But if you're wanting to, right, the real estate agent needs to register. But if you're looking like for an automatic update type thing, they don't have that.
I'm on it right now. Like your agent will go on there and register everything. You're treating it like a normal transaction.
Correct.
Right? Like you're treating it like you're going in through the agent's dealing with all the background. It's going to take longer to close, right? There's gonna be some extra hoops to jump through than maybe typically.
You get a better deal, and you don't have to fight with.
You get a better deal. And at HUD Home Store, back to what Kristina said a while ago, is that you're not fighting investors. Investors can't get on those deals until like a certain amount of time. So
14 to 21 days, I think. Sometimes even longer.
So you've got that jump on it.
Yeah. You don't register, the real estate agent does. Now, if you're trying to find a HUD real estate agent, they'll say, find a HUD certified real estate agent. They have a little tab that's I believe it's at the bottom. You can find a HUD certified agent, because not all real estate agents can sell HUD home foreclosures. If you didn't know
the very first time I ever did it, I was just helping a client. We were learning together, and it was rough.
Yeah. Are stick houses better investment than modular or shipping containers? Though this is me. This is all me. Okay. So here's the thing. A stick built home and a modular home are nearly the same thing. The only difference is modular construction is built to regular building specifications, but in some cases they're actually above the standard building specifications. Like a lot of times they're better energy efficiency. They'll have a better grade on all sorts of different things in a modular home. So they appraise exactly the same as a traditional stick-built home. They are a regular house. They just happen to be pieces that were built in the factory and connected together. There's no difference. Shipping container homes are a completely different thing, and they become a real nightmare, not only for appraisal, because you can't get a 30-year mortgage on a shipping container home. And it has to go through all these different regulations. And if you're purchasing one from somebody, you make sure that everything that they did to that home was permitted through the county, because you don't want to have to hold the bag for the mistakes that they made when they put it together. So just know that, because they're not going to, it's a completely different appraisal process when it comes to a shipping container home in the comparison to a stick built or traditional built home.
I love that.
CC Moon. Hello, CC. Longtime subscriber. It says, what real estate advice would you give your younger self as a homeowner? I turned 35 last month. I owned my house for 11 years now. What advice would I give my younger self? I would have said, do it sooner. That would have been one of the things I would have said. I would have said, do it sooner.
Yeah.
And trust your gut. Trust your gut. I mean, you're going to get a lot of different advice from a lot of different people that think they know a lot more than you, but sometimes they haven't bought a house in 20 years and they think they know everything. Yes. So if your family is involved and they think that they're getting you, like, oh, don't do this, blah, 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 trust your gut. If your gut says that the house is worth this amount of money and you've pulled out the comps and the numbers and everything else, listen to your gut. Don't listen to some family member that bought a house 30 years ago, because they don't know what they're talking about. Things might have changed from the time that they bought a house.
They assuredly have. And I would say the other thing is, this isn't a space to cheap out on your due diligence, right? Yes. Take the time to get the inspections done. If it ends up costing you more, right, than normal. I left the house with a buyer today. We're not just going to do a general inspection. We're also going to have a structural engineer, and we're going to have a plumber come out because we have concerns about those items. And the last house he bought was a disaster in those two areas. So he's extra sensitive to it. So he's probably going to spend an extra $1,000 up front to make sure he's got the peace of mind he wants. And don't be afraid to write a couple of extra checks up front, because I promise you it's way more expensive down the road. But Cece, if you're 35 and own your house for 11 years, here's one piece of advice: buy a house at 24. That's pretty freaking smart. You know what I mean? Like I didn't do that. And that's a big wealth building move.
Me either. I think I was 28, 27, something like that.
Yeah.
Linda said, how about a USDA loans for building, buying and building a first-time home buyers? Yeah, they're fantastic. There is a great loan product. There's nothing wrong with USDA loans. I will say that they do take a little bit longer to close because you have a two-process underwriting department. So they have you have HUD underwriting department, and that sometimes you have USDA underwriting department, and they will hold on to that, and it's in a line. So it's just you can see every day where you are in the line to have that loan approved or for them to check it over. And it's really just them to make sure that everything was done and it's in line with what the rules are for USDA. And once they rubber stamp it, it's really quick after that. But it depends on how far behind USDA is and looking at those home loans. So the process can take a little bit longer, but there's nothing wrong with that loan package whatsoever.
No, that's exactly it.
Do you guys do them? Do you do a lot of USDA?
We have them. I'm just my area is so urban. It's just not like the part of Dallas that I serve in. I just don't represent a lot of them because those areas that have the USDA loans are typically a little bit further out.
I represent a lot of USDA loans here in Louisiana.
It's an amazing loan product. I just don't do a ton of them.
We do a lot of those.
Everybody's giving me love for my t-shirt. I appreciate it. Everybody's giving me love on my t-shirt.
Never let success get into your head. Never let failure get to your heart. Oh, that's a good one. That's a true one. Yeah. I have lots of failures. You can see them all over my channel.
I got a truckload of them.
Question: what do you think the future looks like for rental investors, moratoriums, etc.? Everybody's thinking that these investors are going to lose their rear end because they had all these rental moratoriums. They literally they have nothing. They don't care. They do not care. They're going to make it all back. And not only that, they have a lot of these areas have boosted up their rents so high. They're going to offset it one way or another. And, they get PPP loans to cover the rent and everything.
There's not a huge lack of cash either, right? It's not like these rent moratoriums cause them from making money. I know investors right now who have $4 or $5 million sitting on the sideline. They're looking for something to do with. They're not cash poor. They're going to be just fine. Yeah,
they're looking for more real estate to dump into it.
They're still buying, so I think they're all right.
Yeah, it's the mom and pop investors that are going to be the problem, the ones that really, but even still, let's just say you had this mom and pop had a house, the rental moratorium came through. They had somebody that hasn't been paying for over a year. If they were to put that house on the market, any investor that has big pockets would buy it and go ahead, let those suckers sit there until their lease is up and then kick them out, revamp that house and either resell it or put new renters in there. It's not going to be a problem.
Yep.
It's not going to be an issue. Sid is already 16. Wow. Tell her happy birthday. It is my daughter's birthday. And I know that you don't see my kids, but my kids are really awesome kids. And I can't say how incredibly proud I am of both of my daughters. My 16-year-old daughter went to Vid Summit with me. I went to California to speak at a YouTube conference. I was a speaker at a YouTube conference. I'm that important.
Cool. That was cool.
Anyways, Sydney came with me. Came with me, and she took care of me when I had food poisoning. She literally was the kid that made sure I got on the plane and packed up all of our stuff. She was on it. She was like, Mom, you're sick. Lay down. I got this. And she packed up the whole entire thing. She got me on that plane. She got me off the plane. She tucked me into bed. I mean, that kid is in control. The world better look out for Sydney Smallhorn. because you
awesome.
guys don't know what you have coming for you, because this
That's
kid is
pretty
on
badass. That's
fire.
really cool.
This kid is
Well,
on fire. And
that's
my husband did such a nice job last week, and two real estate agents jumped in at the last minute to help him out to talk about real estate with everybody on the channel, and I appreciate that. And Matt Kelderman has a football game that he needs to go to.
Oh, I don't
And
care at this point. I'm getting updates on my phone. If we're rolling, we're rolling. It's up to you guys at this point.
Oh, okay. We can keep going if you guys want to. If you have another question, just let me know.
Yeah.
Lawnmower says, Matt, is the Dallas County area seeing a reduction in prices or just an increase in time on the market?
We're seeing a little bit of both. So I've said on the show too, the leading indicators of the market calming down are increase in days on market and increase in price reductions, right? And we're seeing both of those. And now our prices that are still, I mean, we put a property on the market in McKinney, which is a little bit north of Dallas the other day, had
I know that area.
60 offers. Like just, and we didn't hold it for some exorbitant amount of time. We put it on Thursday night and called for final offer Sunday morning. I mean, it wasn't like we just held it. Right? Like it got to the point where it was just absurd and we had to just shut it down. So that happens, but we are starting to see a little bit more of just a steadier pace than we were seeing 4 months ago for sure. And I'm talking about kind of Dallas area as a whole, not just Dallas County, kind of Dallas, Collin County, that kind of whole area for people familiar with.
I think some sellers, when they saw the big height of the market go up, they became very unrealistic in their prices. So we have seen some houses become up that should have sold very quickly, but their price was unreasonable. They were ridiculous, and they were testing the market basically. Yeah. And then you would see within like 3 or 4 days, they've already come down on the price. Yep. They already come down on the price.
Yeah.
And so when they do that, you know, like that's an indication, like, you know, like there were some people that got into this market that were kind of just being silly, you know, and yeah. So I'm glad to see some houses have gotten reduced and some sellers are going back to earth. So
and I hear that on a daily basis. Again, I prospect expired listings, and you hear people all the time like, we were just testing the market. We're not getting anywhere near our price. We're done.
You know? I hate when they do that. It just looks, things look bad. Look at this. You are awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the $5 super chat, because all of that money helps me keep this channel going, and I appreciate every single one of you. All right, everybody, listen, I have reservations for my daughter's 16th birthday. Matt has a football game that he has to see. I want to thank each and every one of you, 312 of you today. They came out and spent the Sunday afternoon with me when there's important football games on. Go Sports. Next week, we're going to be talking about the housing market once again. We're going to have Jason Walter on. If you guys... I know you guys absolutely love him, and I absolutely love him too. We have one more super chat that came in at the last minute. Thank you, Kristina and Matt. You two are awesome. I love the real estate life advice. Cool t-shirt quote, Matt. I agree, CC Moon. Nice. And I appreciate you. You're a fantastic subscriber of mine, and you come in every week, and I appreciate that. Thanks, everybody. And say thank you to Eddie for coming out last week. Eddie's going to show you something. Oh, wait, Matt Kelderman actually has a YouTube channel that he actually puts out, guys. Yes, and he actually puts out YouTube content.
Yes. Kristina's going to help me. It is totally different content. It's vlog style. It's completely different. It's not going to be nearly as rad as Kristina's, but anybody who likes my t-shirt, head on over and give me a sub. I need to get it up. I only got 152. It's looking sad right now.
Oh, you guys go over there and give Matt a subscribe. He needs some subscribers so he can feel good about himself.
I know. I'm putting up a new video every Monday at 3. So there's that.
I'm already subscribed.
I know.
You know,
yeah, I love
you know, Matt, honestly, the people that come on this channel, they absolutely love you. So that's why I'm always like, hey, Matt, will you come on this week? They love you. So I'm sure all these people are going to come over. All 312 of them are going to come over and subscribe to you, because it's all about you, my friend.
I love it.
All right, everybody, have a nice Sunday. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.